I'm telling you that already what we are discussing today, the economy of the Republic of Ghana, media review delivered by the finance minister in Parliament on Monday. The Parliament is supposed to rise today. The minority in Parliament is making major reactions to this particular issue. They have raised concerns, what they consider to be the minister breaking some, what they call it, rules that are supposed to be binding his conduct in the House by providing what they say are the not so accurate figures, and also in some instances misrepresenting the interest payments that has made so far to make government look good. We'll be getting some more details from that as we seek to work out our way through that particular issue. But here in the studio, my guest is the technical economic advisor to the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, Dr. Gideon Boako. Doc, you were the one starting the conversation, and we wanted to start from the ports where something good we understand is also happening. Major reforms that government want to do these ports. Specifically run us through what the main things that will be changing and the efficiency you expect there is going to be like.
Yeah, so like I started with, we have a lot of issues at our ports, and then in keeping with the business development focused philosophy of this government, right from the word go, the president set out to make sure that we improve the operations at our ports and bring about some efficiency there. And so if you remember, on the 17th of May this year, we held what we call the Port Efficiency Conference, where we brought leadership of various ports across the group, those who have the best practices, the Dubai port, Singapore port, Belgium port from Antwerp and all of that. Then through that, we had a consultative discussion, and then after the consultative discussion, the Vice President made some pronouncements. First, the Vice President said that by September this year, there should be removal of customs barriers within our ports. He also made mention of the fact that there should be mandatory joint inspections, and then our ports must go paperless. These were very ambitious, propositions that were made by the Vice President. Of course, government did not have to sit down and just get up one day to make sure that these things are coming to fruition. So we needed to start working. And so we started working. We put up a team made up of Ghanaian representatives and representatives from our foreign partners, chaired by the Deputy Minister for Trade and Industry. The GRA was present, the GPHA was present, shippers, owners and agents, terminal operators and all of that. And after this team had completed their work, they had to submit a report to the Vice President. And so they submitted a report to the Vice President. And based on that, the Vice President had to hold today's press briefing and then the post-conference briefing to lay bare on the decisions that have been taken and where we are going to go forward in terms of meeting the targets that the Vice President set out, the 3 targets that he set out in our May conference.
So we will see full automation from September 1. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, so from September 1 is where we start the operations. So from September 1, we start the paperless process. September 1, we start the mandatory joint inspections process, and then the removal of customs barriers process. So that is where the action begins. So the Vice President charged them that by September 1st, this is the way you must go. And so a lot of steps have been taken. And so we needed to brief the media and the Ghanaian people where we have got into and what the next steps are. So basically that is what the Vice President...
We understand that now we're going to have at most 4 hours, regardless of the quantum of goods you are clearing, to clear them. How true is this particular issue?
Yeah, so that is true. As part of the process, the objective is to ensure that if you bring your goods from wherever you want to clear the ports, you shouldn't spend more than 4 hours there. In fact, when you go to Dubai
same
port,
day.
Yeah, if you go to Dubai port, they do it in 1.5 minutes.
Is the Vice President concerned about charges at the ports, which some of these importers and exporters have complained about?
Yeah, all of that.
Port handling charges, for example. Are we going to see a drastic reduction in these amounts?
Absolutely. With the measures we are putting in place, we are trying to bring about automation. We are bringing what we call the risk engine. And so as part of the process, the situation where you had to even open your container for people to go through after it has been scanned, we don't see the need in it. And all of these, the more the processes continue, the interfaces increase, then you see what happens in this country, bribery and corruption and all of that. So we want to beat down costs on all of that. And once we are able to instigate measures that are quite efficient and people are paying the right taxes, okay, you don't need to overburden the few who are obeying the laws. And that is basically the problem that we currently have.
Okay, for example, I mean, as of March this year, you would have to pay close to 16,000, 18,000 rather, to clear a 2013 Hyundai Elantra. By September, when these processes go through, would it be less than this, regardless of the exchange rate differentials?
Well, I'm unable to speak specifically to how much reduction we hope we are anticipating, or how much, even if there's going to be an increase, we are anticipating. But all that we are trying to do is to bring about efficiency. And we believe that once there is efficiency, definitely cost issues will be beaten down. And even when...
But you can't tell me the percentage of change in this particular case.
I cannot sit here, obviously.
So that the importers will be excited by quantum change, which is big enough to influence their pockets. And
obviously, I don't have the capacity to be able to do that and determine how much reduction will be made at the ports. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one issue. That's also, how is the Vice President leading the resolution of this GCNet West Blue matter?
Yeah, so it's not per se the Vice President, but it is a government business, okay?
Yes.
And so it cuts across different ministries and departments and agencies. So the Ministry of Trade and Industry is in here. The Ministry of Finance is in here. You know, previously, the GCNet and West Blue were under one ministry. Then under the dispensation of the previous government, they decided to separate the two, push one to Trade and Industry and maintain one at the Finance Ministry. What we are trying to say now is that there need to be some level of rationalization and consolidation here. Okay, so
you want to cancel contract of one?
I wouldn't be able to sit here to say so.
Has there been a decision taken on what to do with West Blue?
Not as I know.
How about GCNet?
Not as I know. So what is happening is that government is going through the process, consultation and discussions to see the best way forward with engagement of GCNet and West Blue. And at the end of the day, when the right decision is taken, government will lay it bare to the people of Ghana.
Do you agree with those who says that their current cooperation at the ports is actually problematic?
Obviously, why should there be such a duplication of responsibility? Okay, more or less, they are doing the same thing. An attempt to try to separate the two means striking a balance without a distinction. Okay, so I don't see the need for the two of them to be doing the same thing at the same time. If there ought to be segregation of rules, and there wouldn't be real conflict and duplication, I go for it. But if, on the other hand, we realize that their activities are duplicable, then we need to find means of trying to fine-tune the two and make sure that investors and businessmen do not have to suffer double jeopardy. And
you're saying the government has not taken a decision on such an important, some say, distraction at the port?
Government is in the process of rationalizing the system and bringing efficiency into the system. And I'm sure at a certain point in time, a finality will be brought to this matter.
Is there a date where this particular decision ought to be taken?
I'm unable to say so.
Okay, so now there's also another issue. Some have raised concerns about, government says was removing taxes on import duty on spare parts.
Yeah.
Why is it that the law that was passed by Parliament selects specific spare parts that have to be under this particular category?
You know, the problem that existed with us is the fact that we had not clearly defined what spare parts were in this country.
Really?
Yeah, we were using the term spare parts. There wasn't a clear definition of what spare parts is. So when we were preparing the budget in March, this issue came up. And so government had to audaciously make the policy pronouncement. But then we needed to work on the bill and the laws that had to be taken to Parliament for ratification before implementation could begin. And then through that process, the Ministry of Finance sat down with the spare part dealers, and then they had to come out with what the definition of spare part is. Technically, they understand the terms. And so they came out with a definition, and obviously they had to list certain, metal objects that could be classified as spare parts. And so that is how come this definition came, and then some items were selected, others were not selected. So it was in consultation with the spare part dealers. It's not as if government sat in office and took unilateral decision.
And are you shocked that when we spoke to them, our correspondents go to the grounds, they say they are yet to see any change in the pricing of these spare parts, regardless of the removal of these taxes?
Yeah, obviously, I think certain factors come to play. And I think that I don't know if they have started with the implementation in full glare. If the implementation starts, no matter how small it is, definitely they cannot say they wouldn't see any reduction.
Perhaps
it might not be substantial.
Is it the economic principle, rigid downward movement of prices, coming to play here?
Yeah, you are saying. So
I'm just asking. I'm just asking if that is what is happening here.
It happens all the time. I mean, in economics, I mean, things go up, plateau, and begin to descend. Okay, but even if the upward movement gets to the plateau point, we have something called the point of inflection in the growth curves. So once you reach the point of inflection, even though you are going to increase, the rate of increase will not be, it will not be increasing at an increasing rate. So in this case, even if you are talking about reduction, there might be some reduction, but the rate and the speed of the reduction might not be as pronounced as they may expect it. Mind you, the tax element that was taken was not that substantial, but government had a commitment to make sure that it instigates policies to ease, okay, the business operations of the dealers. And I think
if it's not substantial, how is it going to ease business operations?
However small it is said, I have a loaf is better than no bread. However small it is, okay, government has taken the decision to take away a certain burden that was on them, however small it is. And I think the government ought to be commended for that.
So you remove nuisance taxes, which really had no impact on the operations of the people.
It did really had impact, even if it was.
The people say that they can't see any price change.
Even if it was one cent or one peso per spare part. Think about, let's say, importing 1 million of spare parts, and then you multiply, you see the value.
Okay, now let's talk about the highlights of what the finance minister delivered in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana today. He basically said that we are beginning to see the fruits of what the policies and programs of the Akufo-Addo government has been. Just in Parliament today, there are questions being raised about the GDP growth rates that is being posted out there. Indeed, finally, and I've been raising this concern for some time now, finally, government or the finance ministry comes to terms with the fact that as of April this year, the Ghana Statistical Service had revised the GDP provisional, though, for what they call it 2016, from the 3.6 that was projected to be the case as of the end of 2016 to 3.5. But there are still concerns about whether or not the reference to the debt to GDP is still not problematic. For example, the finance minister quotes the GDP specifically to be that of 167, and which really is also what the Ghana Statistical Service provided. But people are wondering where he gets the figure of the debt as of what they call it, the debt currently to be as of the end of 2016 to be the 122.3 from.
No, that debt figure is a debt figure for end of 2016, is that not it? And the GDP figure of 167 is the GDP figure for end of December 2016.
Yeah.
Okay. And these figures are not provided by this government. Okay. These figures are coming from the Statistical Service. Okay. So that GDP figure is not in dispute. I don't know if anybody is disputing that.
What they are disputing is the amount debt that was actually incurred as of December 2016. Indeed, they are saying that instead of what is quoted by the vice president, as in the finance minister, because you are from that office, I tend to reference the office a lot, but as in the 122.3, it should be what the summary of economic and financial data, as in the July release, states to be 122.6 rather. So
the Statistical Service figure. Okay, which one are they talking about?
They are talking about what the finance minister put out there as 122.3 and not 122.6 as the Bank of Ghana alludes in this summary of economic and financial data.
You see, the Bank of Ghana figure came last week or last 2 weeks.
Yes.
122.6.
Yes.
And then the finance ministry is quoting 122.3.
Yes.
Be that as it may, even if you should go by the two, the finance minister has been charitable to the previous government. Is that not the case?
But we're talking about factual statements.
No, but
yes, I agree. I mean, that's not a doubt. So which one should we take? Because if you watch, these are government operations, and it states here 122.6. Yeah, the finance minister is consistently referencing 122.3.
This is a budget that has been submitted by the finance ministry.
Yes. So
let's go with what the finance ministry provided.
Really?
Perhaps you may want to interrogate the Bank of Ghana publication and find out why they arrive at 122.6. Probably there is something that they have captured that the finance ministry has not captured. And these things occur all over and over. You remember in the March...
So two government institutions, I mean...
No, it's not a substantial difference. And, you know, the essence of the matter is not even on these figures. Okay, the essence of
the essence is that it also affects the debt to GDP ratio. As the finance minister is quoting 73.1, the Bank of Ghana is quoting 73.3.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying, that in any statistical analysis, okay, you allow room for some plus or what we call the margin of error. So these things are rectifiable. Okay, and so if you remember, in the March budget presentation, some figures have been revised. Even figures that were produced by Statistical Service and all that, they get revised all the time. As and when new expenditures, new debt items have been identified, and the difference will not be that much. Okay, and so these margins are allowable in statistics, and so as we go along, we try to rectify the two and keep moving with them. The essence of what we're talking about is, even if you're talking about debt to GDP ratio, what is the threshold that we are talking about? Have we exceeded a certain threshold beyond which we may be considered a different country, and then below which we may be considered a different country?
Well, it's 70%. And
that's an unsustainable level that we've got into, and no country expects to get there. Okay, so even if you cross the 60% margin, it is not good news for Ghana. So we should think about the steps that this government is taking to make sure that we remedy the situation and bring our debt to GDP ratio down. If, for instance, you want to take about our total debt stock today and then match it against the projected GDP, our debt to GDP ratio will be coming down to about 67%.
Yes,
okay.
But many people have raised
no, definitely. There are computational issues, because I do not personally agree. But that has been the...
You don't agree too?
No, that has
it
been...
looks like you're not the only person. The vice president doesn't agree.
No, that
you
has
do
been,
not agree.
That has been the...
But why is it the case that it's still being used? The people who matter in the economic management team don't seem to favor this policy, but yet it's being used to calculate debt to GDP. Yeah, that shows because you benefit from it. It shows a lower figure.
That shows the consistency on the side of the vice president. Remember when he was in opposition?
Yes, he raised the point.
Yeah, he used to.
So we had expected that by now that rectified this particular problem.
He used to raise this issue that you cannot compare an actual with
a projected
figure.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. You compare actuals with actuals. And the vice president kept on saying that the way we compute a debt to GDP ratio has not been the best. But fortunately or unfortunately, that is how the Bank of Ghana does it. And they think that that has been the best practice used elsewhere. And in fact, the IMF also does the same. And so over the years, our debt to GDP ratio had been computed based on actual debt stock and then projected GDP. And we think that is not fair. Okay, so even if we use the same practice that has been in this country over and over, our current debt to GDP ratio will be around 67%.
Okay, that's what it is, 67.5%.
That means this government has been doing well. But consistent with our principle, our economic positions and principles, we think that we need to compare actuals with actuals. But we don't determine what the Bank of Ghana must do. It is an autonomous body. And so we have been advocating. And so if the vice president makes the pronouncement, it sends a signal that the government, per its position, wants actuals to be compared with actuals. But until the Bank of Ghana comes to terms to change that, that has been the practice with us, and so we make do with that.
In fairness, if you are even looking at using this projected figure to get it, saying you're doing what might be necessarily misleading. Because if you check, as of April last year, your figure this year in April, yes, I think May, it was 67.5%. April last year in 2016, it was 63%.
Okay, so what is important is what you end the journey with.
Okay, so you're talking about ending everything.
Exactly. So that's the most important thing.
There's a question that's related to all of this.
Yeah.
And the crux of the question is, and I wish you could give me a straight answer on this particular one. How much has the NPP government borrowed within the last 6 months?
Total amount borrowed. I'm unable to place a figure on it. We can try to do a mind exercise. I know we raise
mindful of the office you're coming from.
Yeah.
And mindful of the fact that this is a very theming issue, consistently being raised. Would it not be more appropriate if I get a figure? So it is put to rest the controversy surrounding whether or not you borrowed less, more, or you are tapering off with some other leveraging.
Let's try to get the finance ministry to officially come out and put out the total amount that has been borrowed. I think the Bank of Ghana also in their report made some indications as to how much government has borrowed, but it is proper that we get a finance ministry who runs this all the time on day-to-day basis. It could be that even today there has been some borrowing. I don't know.
That's what I'm asking. As of June.
So let's get a finance ministry.
Because I mean, the half-year review really was end of June. Review.
Exactly. To come clear on that, I've listened to people's argument, and they have said that especially.
Are you sure government today knows how much it has borrowed?
Why not?
Really?
Yeah, why not?
Because I mean, nobody in government seems to be giving some figure on that. It must come
from the official source. So I've listened to people's argument, especially my colleagues in the NDs on the minority, and said that, hey, this government has increased our debt stock from 122 billion to 137 billion, and so it means on average every month they have been borrowing 5 billion. That
might not be the best of economics, but really, can you blame them when you don't have the actual figure to give me?
They understand it, but they're just trying to do that because of politics. Okay. Look, you can sit down with that borrowing, but your debt stock will still increase in nominal terms.
Because we know the other factors.
The fact is, if by December our debt was $30 billion and the exchange rate was 1 cedi to $4,
and
if you convert it into cedis, you convert it to be less than 120 billion.
That's true.
If today the exchange rate has changed to 1 cedi, 4.4 cedis, obviously that will increase it.
Okay.
It doesn't mean the government necessarily has borrowed.
So instead of talking in conditional terms, are you in the position to tell me what factors are increasing debt from 122.6 to 137.2?
Yeah, so now we quote these nominal figures at the aggregate level.
Yes.
So maybe when we go down to disaggregate it and look at the specifics,
go there and give me the figures.
One can be the exchange rate factor that I'm talking about.
Is it the exchange rate factor?
The exchange rate factor has its own
percentage of the
increasing
contribution
effect.
Is the exchange rate factor?
I will not be able to tell, okay? Then the interest payments, as you go along and make commitments on interest payments, that also has a tendency to do that. But of course, it is important that we push government or whoever is in charge of it to perhaps give us the breakdown, okay, of what have constituted the additional
now you are government,
additionality.
I mean, you are in a very powerful position as technical economic advisor. I am of the considered opinion that you, for example, should have all of these at the tip of your fingers so that you can easily relay them to the public. Put to rest what the politicians have been haggling over.
Yeah, we work as a government, and I know a lot, but it must come from the official sources.
So you know the figure, but you can't tell us?
Of course, I know a lot, but the thing must come from the official sources.
What is it about our current debt stock, that is too difficult for government to just put it out there?
No, we know the figures. We are talking about 137.
Yes, but we're talking about how you break it down so that we get to know how much this government has added to the stock. That is why I'm saying that that we don't mischievously put it together and say that we borrowed 14 billion.
Yeah, so we know the debt stock to be 137.
Yeah.
Let's 137.6 billion. Let's get closer to perhaps the finance ministry to give us the breakdown, what actually have constituted this increase of 122.3 billion to the 137 billion. Perhaps by that we'll be able to educate ourselves very well.
They claim that the recent $2.25 billion bond is not really contributing to our debt and increasing same. How truthful is that?
Yeah, so we in finance, we have something we call reprofiling, and I think that's something that this government did, and we must commend the government. And that is why when I see people
for adding more debt,
people aggregating some bond issues and then adding it to say it adds to your debt stock. If we do that, then the debt stock must increase by more than even the 15 billion. That's because this one is not contributing to increasing the debt stock. That is a novelty. So what government did was that when government came into power, there are a lot of short-end, debt, like 91-day treasury bill, and so every 91 days, government would had to find money to pay, and so the issue of interest burden, rollover risk was a challenge one. So the 91 day ends, and somebody says that I am not rolling over. Government must have find money to cough up money to pay. And every 3 months,
we're looking at over 50,000 investors. Does it come up consistently?
No government could sustain. Yeah. It's just not sustainable. So what government had to do is to find some new strategies to get long-end bonds to replace the short-end ones. And so that was a simple arithmetic government did. So for instance, if you owed 1,000 cedis, okay, and you're supposed to pay 20% of the 1,000 cedis every week,
okay,
and you decided that was too costly for you, and you decided to go for another, let's say 1,000 cedis, perhaps at a lower interest rate, that could be spread over, let's say, 1 year. And then you come or let's say you went even for 500 cedis, you use the 500 cedis that you borrowed, okay, at long end to come and pay 500 cedis of the short end debt that you had. So you owed 500 in the short end, now you owe 500 in the long end. In actual sense, your debt is 3,000 cedis.
I get your
It
point.
hasn't increased, but you've been able to replace a less expensive debt with a more expensive debt. That is basically what this government did.
So you're saying that the total debt stock has not been increased?
As a result of that 2.25 billion and all the other billions that we borrowed, it has not increased as a result of these borrowings.
So the issuance of the bonds did not increase the debt?
As far as I know, the issuance of these bonds to reprofile or replace the short-end bonds did not increase our debt stock.
Do you know that for a fact?
I know that for a fact.
Because the Bank of Ghana disagrees with you.
That's
Because the July 24th, 2017 press release of the MPC states in paragraph 14, and I'm quoting directly, said the total public debt as of May 2017 stood at 137.2 billion from 122.6 billion as at the end of 2016. The total stock of the domestic debt stood at 63.9 billion, and the external debt was 73.3 billion. Listen to this part keenly, and I'm stressing because that's where the point is made. The increase in the debt stock was on account of issuance of long-dated domestic bonds in line with government's debt management strategy of reprofiling the public debt as well as extending the yield curve.
so
it states here that the increase in the public debt stock was on account of the issuance of these ones.
Yeah.
So it has increased the debt. That's an admitted point.
That's a begging statement, okay? And we need to also.
The Bank of Ghana got it wrong.
I'm not saying they got it wrong.
When you say begging, what does it mean?
It's begging because it quite runs at the information we get from the finance ministry, and so it's important that we get the specificities from the Bank of Ghana to tell us. These are the.
But this is not in doubt. I mean, this is clear message.
But of course, it doesn't show the specifics. We need to interrogate that. Okay, I mean, the fact that it's coming from me or from Bank of Ghana doesn't mean it is sacrosanct. We need to interrogate it and get the specifics, and then
I get the impression you're trying to say that the Bank of Ghana is so removed from government that this is difficult for you to comprehend outside of the Bank of Ghana.
This is an MPC report.
Yes.
Government does not sit there.
Certainly.
Okay, so that is an MPC report. And once the MPC...
Are you saying that you disagree that the increase in the debt stock was on account of issuance of long-dated domestic bonds in line with government's debt management strategy of reprofiling?
I do not disagree.
But you just stated here that the reprofiling really does not amount to increase in the debt stock. So as far as I know,
a reprofiling issue like the domestic $2.25 billion bond we issued, that did not add to our debt stock. So that is what I'm saying.
Forgive me. So if you take out the $2.25 billion one, let me be clear. Which other ones are we looking at in this case which increase this particular debt?
That's why I'm saying that.
Because what is being referenced here is the issues to do with long-dated domestic bonds. As far as I'm aware,
get the specifics?
The 2.25 is really a long-dated one. Isn't it so?
Exactly. That is what I'm saying.
So
it is
important.
It is important we get to know the specifics.
By specifics, what do you really mean?
So probably it would have been nice to get a breakdown. And once we request it from Bank of Ghana, they will provide. Okay? Request from Bank of Ghana that we want to get the breakdown of the domestic bonds, the domestic long-dated bonds that added to the debt stock. The Bank of Ghana will be able to provide you. And then when that is provided, then probably we ask the finance ministry to also provide us the long-dated bonds they have issued up till now. Then probably we find out which ones appear in the list that has been provided by Bank of Ghana. And where there seem to be some conflict, we can all interrogate it.
Okay, I get your clarification on this particular matter. We're still live here in the studios on this particular issue to do with what the state of the economy is. When we reviewed after 6 months, the vice, why do I say vice president? Because he said the finance minister, of course, vice president chairs the economic management team. Yeah. So he might surely be privy to all of the data going out or the statement going out from the finance minister. Is that also?
Right, but he doesn't speak.
But he was there. He was there. He was actually, he did not participate in the conversation, but he was actually reacting to it with facial expressions when things were being said, and sometimes even laughing off some of the comments that were being made on the floor. Yeah. But the point I want to make in this particular case is that, so closing the book on the debt, and I've seen notices from the Bank of Ghana that we are going to issue more, what they call it, more bonds in the area. We are told that there's going to be an energy sector one. There's also one that's already in the offering 5-year and other ones. Is that government's long-term financing plan?
You see, in as much as we have huge deficit to finance, borrowing will be part of us. Okay, this government inherited huge deficits.
Did the government state at any point in time that it was not going to borrow consistently.
Never.
Never?
You see, people are trying to push words into the mouth of this government. That this
not
government,
even the vice president?
This government said we are not going to, but the vice president was consistently talking about reckless borrowing.
What does that mean?
Consistently.
When you say reckless borrowing, what does that mean?
Borrowing when you do not have the capacity, where your debt to GDP ratio had reached certain thresholds that you needed to be careful. And then the practice in the previous government was nothing but borrowing. And so
really?
we felt, yeah.
But they also said that they were doing smart borrowing.
So if you want to ensure fiscal consolidation, you must make sure you grow your economy. And then by that you can borrow. But even situations where our GDP was shrinking to 3.5%, the growth rate in our GDP, we were still borrowing astronomically, exceeding the rate of growth of our economy. That is not fiscal consolidation.
Astronomically. I mean, what constitutes astronomical borrowing for you?
When you increase your debt from 9.5 billion to 122 point something billion within 8 years, that is astronomical.
9.5 billion as of what time?
End of 2008.
And the present value of that particular 9.5 billion will be what?
Oh, you want to compute that? You can compute that at what discount rate?
Yes, okay. That's what I'm asking you.
So if you want to compute the present value.
I mean, so to give people a fair idea of it, would it not be more appropriate if you use that?
So you would want to use the present value.
Yes.
Of that 9 point.
I have no problems with
5 billion.
Yes.
At what rate?
That's what.
So you need to determine an appropriate discount rate. Okay. You need to determine an appropriate rate. Then why would you also not want to compute the present value of the 122 billion from December up till now?
Yes, okay, I'm open to that. I'm open to that.
So the argument
is there fair? The argument on present way of comparing these figures.
The argument on present value that was adduced by my good friend Honorable Adongo in Parliament is actually not finance. It doesn't. The principle of time value of money does not apply to only specific regimes. And you were saying that how can you apply the TVM over 10 years? I didn't understand. This is not finance. Okay, so it is just. It is just a wishy-washy argument that you try to put out there.
Really?
Okay. So okay. We are talking about debt at a certain period and the rate at which it increased. Exactly. Yes. So that is important. That was the case of the vice president. That you cannot continue borrowing like that. Whilst your economy is shrinking,
did the NDC?
You need to grow your economy, and you can have the capacity.
Up to 2.25 billion at a single go.
So how much you borrow at a single go is not the relevance of the matter.
But you are saying that you are borrowing astronomically.
Exactly. So you can be borrowing.
What is more astronomical than 2.25 at a go?
Okay. So if the person borrows 2.25 at a go and is able to grow the economy within that same period from 3.5% to 6.6%, do you think that is not proper?
Do you think that particular economic growth was due to this government's doing?
But what? That is under the dispensation of this government.
Oh, so that's the only criteria required.
Who do you want to ascribe this to? Tell me.
I just want to know. But okay, so what did the government do?
What
did the government do to actually get to that particular level?
Exactly. That is the point we need to drive for.
So that's the question I'm asking you now.
And that is as a result of this government's prudent management of the economy.
What does that even mean?
You know, this government policy, okay, was to within what we call the Lafayette curve in finance and public finance. What we call changing the focus of economic management from taxation to production. Okay? And so when there are some governments, their main objective is wealth maximization.
Okay.
And if your objective is wealth maximization, then you go on the taxing spree. If your objective as a government is growth maximization, then you also think about the ways in which you can engender economic activity by reducing taxes for the people. And so right from the onset, this government sent a certain signal to the investment community that this is a government that means business, and it means business for the private person. And so we're putting down the measures and the policies to ensure that your businesses thrive, and by so doing, government will be able to get revenue from you.
But this growth indicators that you're so proud of, it was even predicted by the World Bank as far back 2016, that getting into 2017, we're going to see, on the back of oil and gas predominantly. So people will ask specifically, what did you do in the area of oil and gas to ensure that there was increased production?
So haven't we had predicted growth over and over some years, and yet we couldn't.
And yet we couldn't make, like we predicted 3.6 for NDA. So okay, so the question I want you to answer for me specifically on this one is even the Bank of Ghana, paragraph 5 of the MPC report indicates, and I'm looking at that part, which actually says that, however, okay, no, let me start from this. It said there's stronger growth outcome, and this actually makes the point that first quarter this year, 6.6 as against 4.4 in 2016, and says that the stronger growth outcome was largely driven by increased crude oil production. You could have really increased crude oil production by any doing of this government.
Is that what you think?
I mean, okay, so assuming I am wrong, show me evidence. Forgive me. Show me evidence that suggests that the Akufo-Addo administration within the first 3 months actually increased crude oil production. What they did specifically.
That the increase in crude oil production can be ascribed to this government.
Yes. Show me evidence.
The evidence is the fact that this increase occurred during the presidency of this government.
I see. That's all.
That is it. You see, government runs.
No policy direction, no program direction, no specific action of government indicating that.
Government runs business, okay? The business of government. And in doing so, government would have to make sure all the ministries, agencies in charge of that are working, they are working effectively.
I see.
The support government has to give in terms of financial commitments government is doing. If this government came and what it had to inject into the operations of the agencies that were in charge of the government said, I'm not going to do it, he just reclined in the seat and cut budgetary allocations to all of this. Do you think we'd have witnessed what we are witnessing?
So for anybody so he provided budgetary allocations, that's why.
For anybody to think, there could be...
Okay, granted, you actually take that particular one, but there is also another line that says that, however, the non-oil sector growth was weaker, turning out at a modest 3.9% in the first quarter, against a 6.3% recorded for the same period of last year.
So government accepts that and we are taking steps to remedy that.
So you accept that non-oil...
We accept the fact that...
Non-oil, the growth actually decreased compared to that of last year.
We accept the fact that government is like any other human being or machine. Efficiency can never be 100% at all times. And so we had strengths in some other areas. Other areas, perhaps policies that we are putting in place, like one district, one factory, planting for food and jobs, development authority, Zongo Development Fund, all of these policies, the bills that need to be passed in Parliament for implementation have not taken full gear. Oh, yeah. Once this one comes to stream, we believe that all these will be reversed.
Okay, but so to be fair to you, I mean, the MPC also says that going forward, the policy initiatives which are outlined in the 2017 budget are expected to help economic activity rise up to the levels that's required of it.
Exactly.
Exchange rate, how is it doing?
Yeah, it's not bad. It's quite moderating. We realized that whether it was the election pressures or whatever, from November last year, coming down to January, February, March, there were a lot of pressures on our exchange rate. First, on account of the fact that some auctions were disappointing, and also what we call the net, there's a particular net operating, I've forgotten the exact name. What happens is that banks are allowed to, net operating reserve or something, banks are allowed to hold a certain amount of foreign currency in relation to their total mobilization, okay? And once they see that, they were supposed to offload all of that into the market to make sure that there was foreign exchange in the market. But unfortunately, the banks were not complying with that. So Bank of Ghana had to make sure they cracked the whip, and there were strict compliance on that. And so once that also came to the free, there were a lot of supply of foreign currency into the market. And so there were not so much pressure on demand. And so when demand was exceeding supply, obviously, simple economics principle will suggest that there should be price out. And so all these measures have been taken. Government is also doing its best to make sure that we improve our trade balance, okay? So our import and our export, balance had to be matched. And I think, just as the finance minister mentioned, there has been some surplus here. It means that we are exporting more relative to our importation. And so all of that do not put pressure on the exchange rate. The exchange rate is quite...
are charging astronomical prices.
Yeah,
it would curtail importation to some extent.
All these are part of the reasons why we're trying to bring the port efficiency issues and improve upon the system. The exchange rate market is quite a volatile one all over the world. And so government, at any point in time, we need to keep an eye on it and make sure that there's not undue pressure
A few months ago, when it was improving, the CD was having gains. We were told that the Bawumia competence was being put to play.
Obviously, why not?
What's happening now?
It was the competence of the. I don't think now we are losing out.
Really?
I don't think it's as bad as we came to.
Yesterday it was 3.89.
Okay.
Now it's 4.3.
A year today.
Yeah.
End of year today. End of year.
Not end of year. I'm saying year to date.
We did not come to meet year to date. Okay, so
clearly,
we cannot be. Obviously, we can talk about what we came to meet. Okay.
So you want to start for end year, not necessarily year to year. But that would be a better comparison.
We can talk about what we came to meet. At the end of the day, we would want people to judge us what we left.
There's also one confusion somehow about the. The vice president quoted the 91-day rate for the year end year 2016 and said it was 16.4. The Bank of Ghana's summary data also quotes 16.81. So which one should you accept to be the factual?
Talking about the T-bill rate.
Yeah, T-bill rate, 91 day, yeah. Well, you see, whilst he quotes the same one for the, what they call it, 2017 May 1 to be 12.08. When it comes to the December 2016 one, he quotes 16.4, which is very different for the 16.8.
Yeah, so, like, as I sit here as a researcher in finance and economics, these things happen all the time. So you take the World Bank indicators data, and maybe you also take data from OECD, and sometimes you see that the figures are quite different. Sometimes the calibrations and the computations, from the Whether Finance Ministry or Bank of Ghana, there may be some slight changes, but amongst them, they try to rectify this and present a uniform figure.
Will government have enough money to actually push ahead with free SHS?
Why not? Government has committed funds to free SHS. It is more or less a project on the heart of the president. And so if you listen to the education minister, he also mentioned the fact that the government has spoken with the finance ministry and they are creating a special account for free SHS. And so this
when do we expect the monies for the schools? And we are told that's going to be upfront.
Free SHS begins September this year.
Yes, we are in August.
It is beginning September this year, so the funds will flow.
When would you expect the money to go to them?
The funds will flow.
Specific date where we expect the money to go to them. So that the young child will be assured that I have all the things I need ahead of my school time. Because rarely, the schools will have to make procurement. And you know that, right?
Exactly.
Yes, so when do you expect the funds to go to them?
As far as I know, the funds will be ready for the schools to open September this year.
I get you, but is there a specific date that government has determined?
I will not be able to tell. It is the education ministry who will be able to tell.
But the finance ministry releases money to the education ministry.
Exactly.
And your boss is actually the chair of the economic management team.
To say that it will go on the 8th or the 10th, that is not what matters. What matters is that the money is available.
It's not fears that the money will not be available to government.
Let's wait and see. We haven't gotten there. What matters is that government consistently has shown the commitment. The finance minister has articulated clearly what government is going to do. What matters is not the date the money is going to be released, but rather on the day of reopening of school, would the funds be available for them to start? That is what matters.
Are there any statutory funds that have not been released for the first quarter?
I will not be able to tell offhand.
Just Assembly's Common Fund?
NHF? I know DACF. I'm sure government, there were arrears of DACF in the previous government. Yeah. And so some disbursements on DACF have been made. I'm not too sure which arrears have been paid and for this current one.
Can we meet all the targets for NDA?
We hope to achieve all the targets, but typical of every economy is subjected to
the revenue indications are started showing you that you may not be able to go where you want to go.
Yeah, the revenue indications in the first quarter we were unable to meet. There were some improvements in the second quarter. Okay. What we are seeing, there seems to be some kind of understanding and comfort that the policies that were measured in the March budget are yielding some fruitful results. And so we are hoping that with the 3% flat rate, a lot more people will be brought into the tax base, and we are likely to meet our revenue targets.
When are we getting the one district, one factories coming up in all the districts?
That one I will not be able to tell.
How about the first 50 that you promised?
Yeah, I think the coordinator and the ministry in charge of that have made some pronouncements. They have indicated that they have started work on some of the factories. Of course, we cannot all have all of them happening concurrently at the same time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm told that my time is up. Dr. Gideon Boaku is the Technical Economic Advisor. He is the Technical Economic Advisor to the Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, who is also the Chairman of the Economic Management Team. We'll be looking at 6 months into the Akufo-Addo administration. A review was done in Parliament. Minority has concerns, and we sure should be able to end our conversation here on Upfront. My name is Raymond Akwa.